corrector. Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here in Williamson County, Tennessee, and I'm with my best bud, Rodney Wilds, special friend, also in Williamson County. He works with First Bank. He's a loan officer there, and I hope everybody's doing well. I don't want to seem tone deaf to what's been going on last week, so I do want to say prayers to Charlie Kirk and his family, to everybody that loves him and cares for him. And I want to, and prayers to God bless the USA is what I'm trying to say. You know, these are tough times, but I didn't want to change the intro completely because I want to try to get back to normalcy. So I hope that's okay with everybody that I say those things. But Rodney, how are you, man?
Fantastic. Just another good week of weather. And we had a big golf event at our club this weekend. The Corn Ferry Tour was there all week, and they just come out there and obliterated it, which is unbelievable. The scores they shot was crazy, but it was a good time.
Really? And I'd like to know more about that a little bit. I mean, for anybody that's ever watched this, and there's more people than you might think, Rodney is really quite the golfer. He's the golfer guy. Now, what is it? What happened? What took place?
Simmons Bank Open it's the Corn Ferry, just like it sounds with a K, okay. Corn Ferry Tour.
Right.
It's the kind of a launching pad to the PGA Tour, and their playoffs started this weekend. And the first playoff event was at Vanderbilt Legends Club, which is where I'm a member at, and and they just come out there and tore it to pieces. I think he was 20 under, 22 under. But it was, I'll tell you a story. My son played golf, junior golf, and he played with a kid named Blades Brown. And then Blades went on as a 16-year-old to shoot the medalist score in the U.S. Amateur, which was the first time since Bobby Jones had did that as a 16-year-old. So, that kid had tied. And he was from Brentwood, Tennessee. He's around this area. His parents from around here. Really great kid. I mean, it's unbelievable how cool of a kid this is. And so my son got to, play with him a few times in high school golf. And the other junior Blades, he forgo, the college experience and all that, and and playing golf at a premium, any college he wanted, I'm sure. He went straight to the Corn Ferry Tour and has played and secured his spot in the playoffs and continuing. So, anyways, he was out there, and I went and watched him play, a round out at Legends. It was just really cool to see that young man. It's been a long time since like a 16-year-old's jumped on tour and done well, but it's good to see. He's a really great kid, comes from a great family, and just a great overall event at Legends Club this weekend.
I didn't know you were a member of that. And I mean, did you play in the thing? I know this isn't.
Oh no, it was they closed it down for the for the members. You'd have to. Actually, the Simmons Bank Open was free. Like anybody could go out there and watch it. So it was an open event, but no, I can't qualify to play in things like that. It's crazy. Like if you compared to the public, I would be a good golfer, right? If you just compared me across the whole world as golfers. But when you compare a good golfer to these guys out here on tour, there's no comparison. They are miles above what us regular Joes are, So
I mean, if they're shooting, I think we're catching an echo, so I'm trying to fix something here. Bear with me here.
Yeah, I think there's 20 something under. And for golfers to understand this, our course is a par 72. They played it as a par 70, meaning they play it even tougher. Like for the two holes, they made par 5s, par 4s, which makes it tougher, right? And so if you really could add 8 more shots to that score, it'd be like 30 under par for 4 days. It's averaging 7.5 under par a day, which is just crazy ridiculous. So
that is amazing. So here's what we're having that's what we're headed. Is it this week that Powell is making
Yes,
decisions,
tomorrow.
or it's tomorrow? Okay. I'm trying to adjust things here for any for anybody who watches it. I upgraded my system, so if I'm tweaking a little more than normal, that's why. And I think we're catching an echo, so I got my headphones in, but you're good, Rodney. Anyway, so we're waiting for Jay Powell and his band of guys to make a decision on those rates, on dropping those rates. So I think that it's an appropriate thing. I put the show together as rates are going to drop. Now what is really the theme of the show? And what you're going to find out through this show and all the other news is there's nothing new. There's nothing new on what happens when they change the rates. This is things that we've talked about repeatedly, which is kind of a good thing. I'll take, consistent can translate into boring. So I'm okay with that. I would say, though, I did notice, Rodney, that today I use Mortgage News Daily, that rates dropped to 6.13. Is that, I mean, are we on?
Yeah.
Are they just building in what's going to happen here tomorrow? Is that what's going on?
I'd be surprised. I think there's other factors that's doing that today. I just don't think it would. You know what happened from yesterday, or even Friday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, that the market would say, "Oh, we're pretty sure that he's going to lower them, so we're going to jump on it ahead of and try to get some mortgage-backed securities." So I think it's been a foregone conclusion that he's. So I don't think this week. I just think it's a coincidence or just timing that the rates are falling coming into this meeting, and I think it has more to do with our economy than it does affordability. I mean, that's there's just fewer mortgages, so rates are going to drop.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I never thought about that as supply and demand. Isn't that interesting? I never thought about that. Well, so anyway, I mean, 6.13 is getting pretty close to wow. I mean, I don't. 6% is going to be a magic number for a certain group of people. I don't know who they are. It's for the people that think 6% is important. you know, but when that hits, I suspect you're going to see things change. So let's jump into a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is it's the second article on your list, Rodney. It's cooling labor market solidifies the case for the Fed cut as housing shifts towards the buyer market power. And what this is it's addressing what's happening with the Fed and all the rest. And so the housing market, there we go, bing, thank you. Look how fast that is. The housing market today is vastly different from the one that homeowners bought into decades ago. The affordability picture has shifted dramatically as home. Some feel that way. Shifted dramatically as home construction has lagged. Yet the month's supply signals more buyer market power than any time roughly in the past decade. And I am telling you that listing numbers are up. I mean, they're up. Again, I talk about West Haven frequently because I got a listing down there. We're trying to get that done. There's a lot of new listings down there, but what's happening is people are starting to cancel listings. Sellers are starting to pull their houses off the market because it's getting close enough to the holidays, believe it or not, that people are starting to think about Halloween and Thanksgiving. So the substantial equity longtime homeowners have accrued, likely a multiple of their original purchase price, gives them options. I'm one of those. If they choose to sell, they may just need extra time and some expert guidance to get to acclimate to all the shifts. Now, I want to remind everybody, this is an article from Realtor.com. So if there's a spin towards actively buying and selling, that's going to be part of it. It's okay. It's okay. They're positive, but they tend to put that kind of a salesy spin on there a little bit. The already high hope for an interest rate cut from the Fed Reserve has been strengthened after Friday's job report from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that while hiring continued, the pace, and we talked about this last week, the pace slowed yet again. Employers added a net 22,000 jobs to payrolls. Nevertheless, unemployment was little changed at 4.3, and wages continued to advance. Data on July labor turnover showed that gradual slowdown in the labor market has led to a significant milestone. And we pointed this out that I never even considered last week. The number of unemployed job seekers outnumbered job openings for the first time since April. So job seekers have gone up. Any thoughts so far, Rodney?
No, that's good.
Good. All right. So the next, what I wanted to look at was the mortgage rates from 2020 to today. Now think about this. And this, I would like you to chime in on this for sure, Rodney. When we go from back in 2020, when it was basically free money, right? That's what that was. And here's I think I've got another, here we go. This is a little closer. 3.72, down to 2.5, whatever well, full disclosure, mine was 2.7. So I know what that feels like. And then all of a sudden it skyrockets in 23 and started bumping heads with 7 and nearly 8. But what I'm getting at, and my point on this is, from 2023 to now, that's fairly consistent, wouldn't you say? It's going up and down a little, but it's not outrageous, or is it?
Yeah, no, the change is not very drastic, because you can see a good change between 22 and 23. But after 23, if you look at the level at 6.09, basically right at 23, we're probably very close to that today.
I'm telling you.
Almost, yeah. So yeah, it's been when it bumps up to 7, if you look, when it bumps up to 7, over 7% and stayed there for a long time, that's from right after it got there. So that's the ugly part. It's just high right there.
It's just high right there. But since then, and like you've said, and like we always I don't know if it's preaching or not, but all people are looking for, myself included, as consumers, especially with something that can be volatile, meaning the mortgage rates, is consistency. If the market is strong and optimistic and things seem to be getting better, but it's consistent, even, consistent that way. It hasn't pushed past 8%, which a lot of people thought it would. There's people calling for 10%. Well, that just never happened, But that's still, in the grand scheme of things, when you look at this in 5 years from now, that's still, although uncomfortable, it's relatively flat. Anyway, the improvement is good news, meaning the rate. The improvement is good news for those currently shopping and may spur refinancing among those who took on mortgages 2 years ago when rates were highest. Are you seeing that happen?
Yes.
Really?
We are. With this last tick down, like I got notifications this morning that I had several previous clients that, could consider refinancing. Like, to me, it says, some of them can save, $94 a month. One of them, I think, said, but, that's just for me to reach out to them and say, hey, I think we're heading down. I don't think it's a good spot right now for some of them, but it's definitely entering the mix.
And I tell you, if it breaks that 6%, I'm telling you, there's just I'm convinced that there's a mental barrier on that, meaning tripwire kind of a thing, 6%. Watch the headlines. Below 6. Now, I bet you, now that being said, I tend to look at my numbers through Mortgage News Daily, which runs hot, meaning high. I bet you're giving 5% rates all day long, aren't you? Probably.
There's been several that's hit in the 5s, so high 5s, yeah. So there's been several loans that are getting that right now.
Yeah. So 6, and like we always say, that's just an average across the country without anything specific being taken into account. But if you've got questions about refis, if you got questions about getting loans and good rates and really great service, give Rodney a call. His number's in the description box. Everybody knows where that is, so it's in there. Look for it and call Rodney. So pushing back, it says, nevertheless, it's likely not low enough to spur significant unlock for existing homeowners with a mortgage. 81, this was surprising. I didn't know this. 81% of whom have rates below 6%. Did you know that? 81%?
I don't know what the number is, but it's every single person, I felt like on earth that had good rates, when
Yeah.
we went through that first refi boom.
Golly, damn, that's a lot. 81% significant. Underscoring that point, weekly data shows that new listings continue to grow, but momentum has faded as price growth has flattened. That's just the way it is. If you're thinking about selling or if you're considering when to sell your house, I'm telling you, there's no difference in now and probably next spring. The value just isn't. They're talking about a 0.5%, 1% maybe, and Zillow's been adjusting their projected rates growth down for months now. But slow growth is the way it is right now. Anyway, this data points to conditions that are not favorable for sellers, as we've seen in recent years. Obvious comparisons. But a recent realtor analysis found that 1 in 4 homeowners has lived in their home for over 25 years. 25%. And their expectations could be benchmarked to a vastly different real estate market. Hot market hangover. Finally, as the country navigates hurricane season in the south and the east, a fire out west, we issued a climate risk report. We found that more than $12 trillion in real estate value is exposed to severe or extreme risk from flooding. I mean, that's, I guess they're probably talking about coastal areas. Yes, mostly.
Yeah, I mean,
except for not the fire thing, maybe, but
right.
I mean, if Florida is, I mean, when we're talking about length of time on the market, I want to show you something before we jump into the riff. Look at this. Check this out. This is countrywide, and we know that real estate is local, but this is a chart they put together, a map. How many days for sale homes are spending on the market before going under contract by state? You notice for us, it's 70 days. Now, it hadn't been 70 days in years, right? And it's spread mostly across the country. In California, it's just 63. But if you're in Florida, looks like Louisiana and Alabama, you're hanging out there for quite a while. That's just, those are outrageous numbers. I'm telling you, those are outrageous. It's godly. Just a reminder, was it overthink? Was that correct? Overthink?
Yes.
Okay. We know what time it is. Here it comes. Rodney's riff.
All right. Had to blow my nose real quick. Sorry about that. Help me stop overthinking this mortgage. Standard looks like a depth standard 6185. I'm in the process of finalizing the loan. It's $390,000. Actually, it's a purchase. It's $390,000 with $80,000 down. Mortgage option number 1 is a rate of 6.437, not locked in yet. Option number 2 with Mr. Cooper is 6.49% with a 1 year 1% reduction to bring it to 5.49 for the first year, and a refinance option for 3 years with no originating cost. I'm driving myself insane for probably no reason at all. Hell, are any of these rates even any good? All right. Well, help me stop over my thinking my mortgage. I'm here to help. First of all, you talked about 2 options. Let's talk about these 2. 6.437, and then you have one that's 6.49, okay, with an option of you get 5.49 for 1 year, and then in 3 years you get a refinance option. All right, so the first thing I'll say is there's really no comparing these two options. Like,
Hmm.
there's no difference between 6.43 and 6.49. So if you're getting a bonus with Mr. Cooper, a 1% buy down, um, that is the best deal. And I will say this: I have seen 6.49 rates, but I haven't seen 6.437. Um, I'm not sure how that rate. You know what I'm saying? They usually go in eighths,
Hmm.
0.125, like 6 and 1/8, 6 and 1/4,
Hmm.
6.375, and then
Hmm.
6.5. But occasionally companies will come in and drop that 6.5 and make it 6.49 just to be a little bit more attractive.
Hmm.
Um, so, so the first things first is, um, there is no stop overthinking it. One seems to be a pretty good deal, and the other one's pretty average. So I wouldn't worry about those. There's really no comparing. And then the third thing of this option is the 3 years with no originating cost. Um, Refinance options are, what? How do I say it? I think they're all a scam, just to say it
Huh.
as bluntly as I can say it. And
Hmm.
here's why I say that is because you get this loan and Mr. Cooper buys it, and they just want you to come back and refinance with them. You're probably not paying any origination cost with your loan now. So all they're saying is they're not going to charge you origination cost, but that's always tied to the interest rate as well. So the first thing I would say is there is absolutely zero value with a refinance option down the road. They just now, if I tell a customer I want to give them $500 off and they have it, and whatever it is, they come back and refi and they get $500 off. That's $500 off. I mean, that's as good as it can do. But this whole thing's 3 years with no originating costs. To me, that just means they're not paying any points, and you're
Hmm.
probably going to get an average deal at best. So that's what I'll say about that. Let's so to me, you don't have very many. There's no reason to overthink it. It looks like Mr. Cooper is a great option, even though I'm saying that option for the 3 years of it's worthless.
Hmm. Hmm.
So let's
Hmm.
let's jump in the comments and see if the comments are pretty. There's not much crazy going on today, so it's pretty low key in these responses. But um, I'll start with cuteness overload. I think I saw 5.99 out there today. You can probably get a better rate. Shop around more. That's not bad advice at all. Shop around more. He's called two companies. Um, I would definitely at least call one more to see. Street Refrigerator says Mr. Cooper is not competitive. I'd look at other options. Mr. Cooper is very competitive. They're one of we invest have some investments with them as well. They're
Hmm.
a good mortgage partner. I don't know who's saying that.
Hmm.
Medellin Mortgage. No one can tell you with this info. For all we know, you have a credit score of 640. If you're finalizing a loan, that means your escrow is closing soon. You've had an appraisal done. Which lender did you? So he does have the same advice I do. There's no magic 3 year free. It's just a ploy to sound good. Any lender can offer this. So
Huh.
good job on that piece. All right. So he comes back and says somebody answers a question. It is a purchase. I had to go non-contingent to secure the home. So once I sell my current home, I will be doing a refinance. Realtor recommended company one, needed to verify approval at the time. Offer was accepted. Only checked with Cooper because they currently hold my mortgage. So you get a little bit more of the story in this one. He's got a home to sell, so that would totally change anything that I'd recommend with a buy down. Because a buy down, if you go in there and pay principal, it may not affect it. I don't know if I've ever had a buy down and somebody coming in and trying to pay down their loan. But if he's to refinance it in the first year, if his house sells, that money depends on who pays it. The money would go back to the buyer. But to me, I'm going to do something different because I know he needs to put that money down and recast his mortgage. So I would do something a little bit different with his loan. I would just get him on a regular 30-year fixed mortgage with the lowest rate possible, no buy downs, and then when he sold his house, I would recast it instead of refinancing it. Means I would deal with my servicer and come in and let him pay that money down, and we would change his payments according to the new balance. And that's a lot less cost effective. I mean, that may only be a couple $100, where refinance could be several thousand. So that's when you get all the information, stuff changes. But the response goes, if rates were more favorable after you sell your home, looking at recasting rather than refinancing. If you're looking for minimum payment relief, the cost is small, $150 to $400. It's probably a little bit more than that. And the lender effectively snaps your amortization schedule, keeping the same remaining time and rate, but adjusting a minimum payment to reflect the dramatic reduction in principal. Okay, so that's what a recast is.
Okay.
And all Fannie Mae lenders, I think, offer it. I don't think there's a single Fannie Mae loan that doesn't have that feature. This one, somebody's worried about who's Arch a Soldier, who is funding the 1% buy down. All you're doing is prepaying the interest for that year or adding that to your principal, which would be more expensive in the long run. That is not accurate. You do not add any on a buy down. Somebody takes the money, the difference in payment, and has it in an account and sends it to the lender. Okay. That's the only way buy downs work. There's no, you do not add that to the principal. The principal doesn't change once you have a note like that, unless you call and they allow that,
Right.
Which sometimes they did if, when COVID and people couldn't make their payments. And let's see here. Tekel, I'd be more concerned about affording a 310 loan, including taxes, insurance, blah, blah, blah. Most people seem to way overextend their mortgage payment. He just comes out of left field with that one. Let's see here. Those rates are normal right now. The Mr. Cooper one is just a buy down with a refi perk built in. If you think rates will fall soon, the deal could work out. If you'd rather keep it simple and not gamble on refinancing, then the 6.437 is fine. Yes. How can you recommend a 6.437 over a 6.49 and then you get an option for 1% low for the year? You're never going to make that money back up. Like the difference between 6.49 and 6.43 is minuscule.
Yeah.
If you get 1% for free for the year, that would be the route to take. So that is the riff.
I got to tell you, that music sounds particularly good on headphones. It's so I got a question based on your riff. That was an excellent riff, like always. That's excellent. This is that is me defined, meaning I overthink. That if I had a superpower, overthinking would be it. And even when you and Alex and I were working together, I wore you guys out with questions and stuff. And so my question is, I mean, this guy has just enough information he's kind of worried about things, concerned about things. When you come across something like that, don't you do like a spreadsheet or a comparison, or isn't there a way to compare all those different scenarios for somebody?
Yeah, but the first things first is that we would have had all the information. Like, when we're doing these posts, from just like he didn't say his debt to income, he didn't say his job stability.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, they give you such little information, but you just go on what you have there.
yeah.
And I just thought that was pretty cool that he added some to the, later in the thread, he added, some stuff that may change how I would set the mortgage up. Because coming into, either 100,000 or 200,000, whatever it is, and he's going to use that on the mortgage as significant information, so it's like,
I,
so when you have the information, yeah, you put it together, and then you say, you figure out what they want to do, right? You figure out, like, what does the customer want to do? Well, the customer wants to sell their house, buy, and go in without a big problem, and sell his later. But when that money comes in, he wants to apply it towards this mortgage. Perfect. We got a scenario for that. It's called recasting. Um, so it's a very simple process. I would have just said, hey, let's stay away from any kind of buy downs or any kind of things like that could complicate what you really want to accomplish. Is that's getting it paid down later. So, I want their mortgage to be perfect, for down the road, not necessarily just when they purchase it. Like, it's got to be good for years down the road is what our goal is.
it amazes me, for the years that Rodney and I have worked together. For people, because people come in of all stripes. Some very sophisticated buyers, and then others first time, like, where do I sign? I mean, it's that kind of stuff. And working with Rodney, if somebody ever asked me during the course of the home buying process, this happens a lot, buyers will say, what do you think about this rate or that rate? And my answer has always been, for 20 years, it has been, that's a lender question. And I'm not sidestepping anything, but it's his job, it's Rodney's job to stay on top of the changes, the rule changes, the rate change, all that stuff. It's not that I don't care. It's just I'm busy enough. I, anyway, that's what I do. And through all these years, the buyers, when it gets about halfway through the process, it's kind of funny. I indoctrinate people because they'll start to ask a question. They'll go, wait, that's a Rodney question. And I'm like, good, there you go. Good, very good. The other question I have about this, when you've always said, I thought this is very cool that you would say this, you're a big advocate of shopping around for
Yes.
people. I mean, you're a huge advocate of shopping around. My question is, because I thought I knew the rules on this a few years ago, and it turns out I think I was wrong. When does that get locked in? When you're working with somebody, does an intent to proceed, is that
Yeah, that's as
locked in?
good. Yeah, that's as good as anything. I mean, the way I look at it is we don't get too far down the road if I'm not the person they're going to work with. Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
say, and it's happened before, let's say somebody comes in and they've just got an incredibly good deal. You could run into a situation where, like, a bank, let's say First Bank has a client, that they banked their family for 25 years or something. And,
Mm-hmm.
they come in and they offer, the banker or whatever private client offers them a really good rate and can beat our mortgage rates. That's why we shop is that. But I think the best thing I do about shopping is when I tell them how to shop. It's,
Mm-hmm.
you can shop without having your credit pulled. You can shop, you have to shop on the same day. If you don't shop on the same day, you're comparing apples to oranges. And that doesn't even, what that means is the lender you choose could be the worst lender just because you chose them on the wrong day. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody had asked me a week ago and then they come back, oh, I'm not busy anymore, I'm going to try to shop again today, a week later, that anybody they call would have beat me last week. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Because rates
Mm-hmm.
keep declining right now. So, and then just making sure which fees that are comparable. Because we honestly, the lenders don't have a lot of fees in these things. It may be $1,500, but the rest of the stuff is title companies, taxes, title insurance, escrow accounts, stuff that we don't set the price for, that would be the same with anybody. So you don't have to shop the whole list. You just have to shop a couple fees and the rate. And so that's how you shop mortgages is just a few tips like that. And you can get them. And then there's a couple things I add to that. I always tell them to call lenders and tell them if you lock today, you don't have to tell them you're under contract. Just say, if I wanted to lock this rate today, so they can't give you something that they know in a week they don't have to honor.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just tell them today, that's a big key part of it, is like, I'm going to decide my lender today. So what's your rate, kind of thing.
That's a good tip right there. I mean, because it causes them to be honest. I mean, not that they're dishonest, but transparent, whatever.
Yes. I mean, and let's face it. I mean, our there's people in every walks of life, every business there is, that's going to try to bend the rules to get a customer, so you definitely, there's things you need to do to watch out,
Yeah. Now I can tell you from my side of it, I have worked with a number of people over the years that have, and I'm not casting aspersions, I'm just telling you what happened. I'm allowed to do that. I've had this experience that people have used lenders that they found online. That doesn't necessarily make them bad. I think probably Mr. Cooper's an online thing. But they've found online people, and they started working with them, and I was like, and I've had over the years more than one deal blow up because it was an online lender that didn't do it right. And so I'm an advocate for talking to somebody that you're familiar with, and talking to somebody that maybe you get referred to by somebody else that's had a good experience. In particular, Rodney. I mean, every week I promote how he's had a 100% closing rate on time for me. And I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody else. Thank you.
You're
Anyway.
jinxing me, by the way. You're totally jinxing that. Like, that is just something in our business that's just not.
Yeah, it's happened for 15 years in a row. Yeah, it's happened I'm calling it a trend. Anyway, thank you for that. The reason one of the things I love about our little live stream here is that we get to talk to Rodney a lot. And that is, I don't care who you are as a buyer out there, finding a nice house is really important. But I'm telling you, the home price is not nearly as important as the lending behind it. It's the mortgage and that monthly payment that people are actually interested in. They want the house, but if it doesn't cost the right amount, then they're in trouble. Let's move on. So as we're talking about rates going down and the environment improving a little bit based on the Fed and all the rest of it, this next article that I picked up, now this is going to sound negative, but it's not. It's a numbers thing. It's called the average U.S. buyers can't afford 72% of homes on the market now. Here's why and which areas are most impacted. The which areas struck me. Not funny. I don't want to be rude, but it struck me. Anyway, so buying a home has never been easy, but new data shows just how far out of reach the American dream has become. That sounds a little dark. I'm sorry. Let me continue. It's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. In fact, according to new Realtor.com affordability report, the typical household can afford just 28% of homes on the market today, and that means nearly 3 out of 4 listings are priced beyond what most buyers can reasonably handle. Pretty sure they did their numbers with the median home price, right? And which is what, $430 now, and median income, and that's how they bracketed that out. I would think, and so even for people that are well-to-do, you start to get into $3 and $4 million, of which there's a lot of them. You're not going to be able to afford it. Unfortunately, a combination of factors has put the typical home out of reach for most Americans by affecting their buying power, which is about to change here in a few days. Hopefully, that's headed that way. as the total amount of income they can afford to spend now buys them much less house. Okay. So homeowners can't afford homes in most markets. Realtor.com found that a median here we go. Found that a median income household can afford a maximum home price of 298. God, was I off on that, which is actually 30,000 less than in 2019. The steep drop is largely due to high mortgage rates. In 2019, average rates hovered between 3.5 and 4.5. Today, they're closer to 6.5 and 7. Do you want to interject yet? Are you ready or no?
No, let's do it.
Okay. In 2019, a $400,000 home with 20% down at 4% rate would mean a mortgage payment of around $1,500. That's downright doable. That is downright doable. In 2025, that same home at a 6.5% rate cost about $2,100 a month. That's $600 increase just in interest and principal. Stop it. Stop it. Another major challenge is that real estate household income has barely improved, and that's true. U.S. Census data shows that inflation-adjusted median income stood at roughly $83,024, essentially the same as in 2019. This isn't enough to offset the $600 jump caused by interest rates, and that's before considering home prices themselves. Home prices have surged nearly 38%, imagine that, since 2019. Rising from 319 to 439, that's a bunch. Put together, higher prices, steeper mortgage costs, and slower income growth have left many households locked out of the market. Now, you've certainly seen that.
Yeah, I mean, it's look at that difference. It's $600 in payment difference. But what I'm sitting here thinking of is like, look at the cost of eggs and bread and milk over
Oh,
over the same time period. Um, all of that stuff has increased to where the affordability of everything is just gas. So yeah, I mean, housing gets knocked because it's the biggest payment. It's the one. Okay, well, I got to get gas, I got to get bread, I got to pay rent. So I see the frustration with this, the unaffordability. Like it.
eh,
But if you just sit there and had a really great rate, it would it would help a lot of that.
it would help if it ever dropped down to that. I can't imagine what's going to. You're absolutely right.
Well,
I was
yeah,
about
I
to.
mean, if somebody's buying a $400,000 house, just think if you just said, "Hey, I'm going to save you $600 a month."
Okay.
That's a ton of money. That's a decent percentage of of the payment.
Oh, that's a ton of money. That is a ton of money. It says here, and this is what I kind of thought was a little bit interesting, and I'll be careful on how I characterize this, but some markets have been hit harder than others. The report shows affordability has eroded in nearly every corner of the country, but some metros have been hit particularly hard. Buying power fell the most in Milwaukee, Houston, Baltimore, New York City, Kansas City, where wages have lagged well behind housing costs. And what they're talking about, of course, is home prices going up more than employment. Not every market is struggling, though. Realtor.com found 6 areas where stronger than average wage growth actually improved affordability, and those included Cleveland. I'm an Ohio guy. I used to live near the lake up there. God damn, it's cold up there in the winter. I'm just telling you. But Phoenix, Phoenix and Mesa, that surprised me a little bit because Phoenix was like its city for a long time, with the prices skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Richmond, Virginia, I just don't know anything about that. Indianapolis, I don't know much about that. Tampa, I do know about that. That was, again, its city. Austin, my God. And these have improved, and those are the ones that a few years ago, you're not buying stuff there. It just was way
Yeah,
over
I mean,
ask.
this is exactly why these markets teach you so much about real estate, because in who would guess you would have right now these markets flourishing, that's doing, but it's always local. local, and I think the people are buying the interest rates mean less to right now. That
Mm.
they just have the extra residual income to handle this higher rate.
And I think that you're absolutely right about that. What this does teach us is that nothing stays the same. And I'm convinced because I saw it happen. We both saw it happen back in 20 to 23 when prices they were stupid. I mean, $50,000 over ask and stuff like that was because people were convinced that it was going to stay like that forever. That's the only reason you would overbid $50,000 for a house, is because you thought it would never calm down and you'd never be able to buy a house. Well, that just isn't true. That just isn't. So it says, and these are just practical advice on how to manage today's housing market. So with prices and rates stacked against buyers, what can you do? I thought this is pretty good. Keep housing costs low, below 30% of your income. Now, you've talked about this before. That seems like a Ramsey-esque. His is like 25. Is that reasonable in your opinion? 30%?
Yeah, 100%. That's right on
Okay,
Fannie Mae. Pretty much all the guidelines.
got it.
Right in
Although
line.
lenders can press that and go much higher, can't they?
Yeah, it's really an automated underwriting system. So it definitely takes way higher than that. But, that's like I said, but for people to afford it, it needs to be around 30%,
Hmm.
or else they're not going to have any grocery money.
When you talk about underwriters, there's rules. Things have changed in that arena, haven't they, in the last 6 months?
Well, they're ongoing. I mean,
Oh,
it's always shifting. It's a computer program. It's being that's always being tweaked to try to open up the door for as many buyers as possible, but yet keeping foreclosures, at a bay.
yeah.
So that's the computer program, and that's pretty much everybody uses the same couple. So
Got it. Yep. And low foreclosures, and that's still the case. And what we're talking about here, what this is a follow up to, is trying to help people get more house for their money. It's all it is. So 30% of your income. Remember that your total debt, including mortgage, car loans, credit cards, shouldn't exceed 36% of your income. Tools like Fannie Mae affordability calculator can help that. And I pretty much guarantee that when you give the full story to your lender, they're going to be able to talk to you specifically about that. I can't insist on that enough. Talk to your lender first or way early in the process, so frankly, so you know what you're getting into. Just please, I'm begging you, please do that. Don't forget, you also have to factor in other debt too, as your total debts, including your house and your other low payments, should not exceed around 36% of your income. Adjust your search. Now, this I thought was pretty interesting. After determining your buying power, and what I always tell people is decide how much you want to spend, and we'll see what's being offered on the market for that. And then like if somebody wants up to $400,000, typically what I'm going to do is ask them to be searching in that 380 range, kind of, because if they have to compete or if there's multiple offers, which seems a little more unlikely these days, it gives you a little bit of flexibility, but maybe don't look at houses that stretch your budget right to the top. That's what I'm saying. But after determining your buying power, you can look at what homes are available in your area to see if there are any in your price range. If you can't find a house that'll keep your payments below 30% of your income, which I think is built in by giving the proper range, right? Don't I have that
right,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Here's the other, I'm going to give you another tip on when you're searching for a house, though. And I want you to think about this. When somebody starts searching for a house, you can be in Nashville or Franklin or Brentwood or whatever, and let's say that you have a price range of 500,000, 600,000, pick a number. When you search an area, hopefully what you want to do, you're going to be able to find the price that you want. That's what you're asking for, and the type of house that you want: 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 4,000 square feet, whatever. But most importantly, most people are looking for a location. That's generally what they're after, be it schools, whatever. Quality of life is you choose that by location. That's just the way it is. What I'm suggesting is, let's say that you wanted to live in a certain price range in Franklin. Look for an area when you do your search that gives you 5 to 10 opportunities in that price range. If you do that, then you're going to have a better chance of finding a house that you really like if you have different opportunities to choose from. If you do a search in an area specific, which realtors can do, and it's say $600,000 and only one house shows up or two houses show up, that's not your area. It's too high priced for you. Generally speaking, it's almost always overpriced, and it's going to be frustrating because you're not going to get the results from the search. So keep looking for areas that'll help you determine where you can live based on that number. Make sure that it's called what I call a target rich environment. Make sure you're getting good returns. Doesn't mean perfect house, but you have options. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Sure it does.
Makes sense.
Expand your search outward to find a more affordable price. Now, on this, I'm going to say be careful. Because I was reading in Reddit, and again, I just love Reddit they do a good job of monitoring that. This very story came up, and somebody was talking about they had looked at a house that was probably 10, 12 miles away from where they were looking at originally. And it was a nice house. You know, when you move farther away from a metro or a city center, prices start to drop down because that's what you're paying for is proximity. Well, this person did that, and they bought a house that was 10 or 15 miles away. And within 6 months, they said, I love my house. I hate the commute. And now they're stuck. He said, I never thought about this. And I always tell my buyers about this. He said, I'm stuck in traffic 40 minutes every day, both ways, because he's in the regular 9 to 5 stuff. Anyway, be careful if you're going out of town to buy a house to get a better price. Sometimes spending a little less and staying closer to where you live, work, and play is something to consider. So hopefully that makes sense. Now this one, I just didn't. I think that this is AI. Search for homes with an assumable mortgage that could offer lower payments. No? Is that possible?
I will say this. I think that would be a huge waste of time. In all my years of being in this business, I've never seen anybody assume a mortgage. I mean, it's just not a product that I've seen work. And I know people, I knew when, assumable came out, and I think you remember I wasn't very happy about everybody throwing assumables on listings because it's it's just, there's just so many hoops you just have to jump through. There's, there's still lingering, potential lingering stuff that could affect the seller. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. I'm not that well versed in it, but I know I've never seen it in all of my years.
I've never seen it. And I always talk about the private realtor groups that I'm a part of. I'm part of a few, not a ton, but a few. And that's where we get to kind of talk shop, behind the scenes. It's private. You have to be qualified to get in there. And I can't tell you during the course of maybe a month, the number of times that people will come in and say, can anybody tell me about assumable mortgages? Because what will happen is a buyer will read that, get an assumable mortgage and get it for 2.92. They're like, I want one of those,
Yeah.
How do we make that? It's more qualified than you think is all I'm saying. So, but
yeah, the whole paying out somebody's equity and, things like that is just a problem. It's just not a good fit. Like you're looking for a needle in 2 haystacks.
Well, leave that.
Somebody found a needle in 1 haystack, but I've never heard somebody find a needle in 2 haystacks.
I'm telling you, that is perfect. And the next one I think is almost certainly AI generated. Not that there isn't good stuff in it. It says consider unconventional ideas like buying a multi-generational household with family. Maybe, there's there's been, I've had people over the years, it's one of the most common things that if somebody's moving from out of town, coming into this area, and I don't know why I'm sure it happens everywhere. We'd like to get 3 or 4 acres with several houses on it so we can live with our family. Mom and dad can live in the main house and we'll live in a little one on the back 20. Everybody, either that or they'll want to do a triplex. I've seen that, and they'll have families. I don't know. That just doesn't seem doable. That's just doesn't seem doable to me. Anyway,
Yeah, that
what do you?
I just couldn't live with my in-laws. Like, I
It
mean,
seems to me that is a setup for a bloody mess.
but okay, so I've got my oldest son just graduated UT and he come back home. He graduated in the fall, I guess. No, he graduated in the spring. He graduated in the spring, come home, and it's like it's not bad for me. But I guess I'm the dad, but I'm sure he's going to want to get out after being living on his own for 4 years at UT. So
Oh God, yeah. However, isn't that one of the most common things now? Is kids in their 30s moving back with mom and dad? I mean, it's like really common. So when I'm
well,
not
I'm
judging.
in the same spot. All the everybody who has a kid out of college, only thing that he's really I guess financial goals or house goals. He's just saving up some money for
Yeah,
where he can invest in a down payment. So, and I want him to. I want him to live here as long as he can, save up as much as he can, and start his you know his life outright. Without getting in too much debt or whatever. Right off the bat. So.
well, it sounds like you got a good kid. My guess is there's probably more than one. There's probably a couple of categories. There's ones like your kids that's saving up money, preparing for life out there, and then others that are like Game Boy all day or whatever.
Yeah, I couldn't. I'm blessed. I thought he was playing a trick on me one time at college. He joined a Bible study right off. As soon as he got up there, he found somebody in a Bible study, and then and had a really crazy story about when on their Bible study they went out and talked to some people on campus, and this kid was like, "Man, I'm so glad you reached out to me. Like I didn't have a place to go, and it was." And so I was waiting on him to ask me for money, like when he got
Huh?
done with his story, and he never did. So I'm like, well, he might be a good kid, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I was waiting. I was waiting on the. Oh, by the way, can you send me 2,000, or something like that? But
And it
never
didn't
came.
happen. Yeah, look, you are a lucky, blessed man. You are.
Yeah.
Well, to finish up, I think this put a nice bow on it. Is this idea that the Fed raises alarm over deterioration of the housing market, and I don't mean that to be not at all negative. Here's what I'm getting at, really, and here's my point. The U.S. housing market's in a slump. We know that. The Federal Reserve has taken notice. Notes from the Fed meeting in July highlight discussion between committee members, and this is going to be tomorrow, I guess, between committee members on slow economic growth in the first half of the year due in part to a decline in residential investment. Members reflected on weakening housing demand, more homes for sale, and fallen home prices. Staff economists at the Fed also reported that housing valuations have edged down but remain elevated. Both those true. What the data says, and I'm coming to a point, what the data says, according to the National Association of Realtors, existing home sales ticked up just 0.8% year over year. That's just a tiny amount. But inventory, 15% increase, and months worth of supply, 4 to 6, rose significantly from the year earlier, signals that the market is slackening rather than roaring back. The rate of new home sales, seasonally adjusted, fell year over year in July per the Census Bureau. The month's supply rate also increased to 9.2 months. That's for new homes compared to 7.9. Here's my point about this particular story. I won't go on. It's the first line. It's the first line that says the Federal Reserve has taken notice, because it seems to me at the end of the day, it's the big boys that's got to help us find a way. I mean, it's the free market, and I get that, but we can get a lot of help from guys like Powell and and that sort of thing. So it's taken 15 years to take notice. I don't know. I might be an exaggeration, but I mean, do you agree with that at all, or am I just way off track?
Yeah, no, I like the fact that they are noticing. I like the fact that, because for years, we've honestly, they have been talking. And I think we talked about this a long time ago, but in my opinion, the only time they are happy is when we start losing jobs. That's the only thing that slows, inflation down, just to keep it in. And I think a lot of these are conservatives where they don't like the economy just roaring 24/7, because it was roaring,
Hmm.
before COVID. And then during COVID, the housing lifted the economy, because it was such craziness going on in the housing market. So, yeah, I'm glad they're finally noticing. I don't think I'm glad they're probably finally doing something about it, because they're genius of people. They know what's going on. It's not
Yeah.
that they haven't noticed. They just haven't really wanted to do much about it and let things take care of themselves, because our business are cycles.
Yeah.
And anytime there's a cycle, they don't need to get in and try to ruin the cycle, whether it's up or down or whatever. I mean, but I think they're seeing it now as like housing affordability is a crisis, because, a big part, one thing they can control is rates,
Hmm.
or help with
Well,
rates.
and I don't think it's lost on anybody as we finish up here is the unintended consequences of people getting in and meddling with these numbers. I mean, all we have to do is look back to when he dropped the rates down to like close to zero, and it really was free money, and all of a sudden, that was the genesis of all this BS. I understand that we needed help, but they were too fast to respond and too slow to react.
Yeah,
I'm an idiot. What do I know? But
yeah.
anyway, but they're taking notice, and I'm glad. And we'll hear more about it tomorrow, and you and me will talk about that next week. So, any final thoughts?
No, great show today.
It,
I like it. It's a lot of stuff. The thing about all this, it just really points to the fact that if you pull out 10 places that are not doing well, you pull out 10 places that's doing better than normal. I mean, it's just crazy how crazy, you could go in some place in Florida, for example, and find something that's been on the market for 100 days and get a steal on it, or go to Tampa where that is and pay over a list.
yeah, yeah. Or up to New York and be completely railed. God, you're absolutely right. What a great, what a great rip. I appreciate you so much on us being able to talk about those numbers. So, I'm hoping for the best tomorrow with Big J, J Bird. Hope he treats us
J
well.
Dog.
That's the J Talk. Thanks for everybody being here, Ange. We'll talk to you later, and we'll see you next week.